because I want you to know that I was a model child. I never did anything wrong. I was the eldest child. You know there's a burden on the eldest child. You have to set the path for the ones who come behind you. Unfortunately, I just had 2 younger brothers, but that's another story. Now, their nickname for me was Miss Goody Two Shoes, because I would do no wrong. When my mother gave directions as she left the house, I followed those directions. I watched my brothers one day as she told them not to leave the house until she came back. I sat down. I was reading a book in the living room. My brothers were wrestling in their bedroom. When the noise subsided, they said, "Hey, Celestine, come in here with us." I should have known better. They never invited me into their inner sanctum before. When I stepped across the threshold into their bedroom, they grabbed me, threw me into the bedroom closet, closed the door, pushed the dresser in front of the bedroom closet, and left the house. Like my mother wasn't going to find out. Now, when I came to and I opened the door hit the huge mirror that was leaning on the dresser. It fell to the ground, broke into 1,000 pieces right as my mother walked in the front door. I remember I got a whipping for that. I tried to explain to her that it was not my fault, but I guess she was just caught up in the moment. So from that moment on, I knew I had to get them boys back. And I'm pretty sure that they could tell you now that I did it over and over again. But that's another story. Because my cousin used to tell me, you know, you're never going to have any fun because you tell your mother everything. Well, she didn't know why I told my mama everything. See, I was the kind of child who loved school. I would leave my house early in the morning, walk to Williams Elementary School. I would stay as long as I could because I didn't know what was going on in my house. One day I turned the corner on Vermont Street, looked down the street, and there were police cars in front of my house. People wanted to know why the police was at my house. I said, I don't know, but I'm not going there till they leave. So school was my sacred place. I would stay after school working on science fair projects, in the choir. I was always the narrator for the Christmas show, okay? I was a diva way back then. But I remember I had stayed after school late one day working on my science fair project. Got it out of World Book Encyclopedia. Made this huge plywood heart. Had the valves and the red marbles and the blue marbles, and you tilted it up and down so it would simulate how the blood flowed through the heart. It was heaven. Until one day I stayed at school too late and my daddy forbid me to stay after school anymore. Well, before he did this, I came home a little late and I took a shortcut from Williams Elementary School through a field that had a path worn by students who didn't want to go around the street side. They cut a path, and on that path I met some kids from Pulaski Junior High School. They had one of my classmates, and they didn't want to move out of my way. And because there were more of them, they thought they could bully me and make me move out of their path. Now, I don't really know what happened, Bob. I know we were like chin to chin, when all of a sudden I decked her. Good punch, I had a good arm, because I had brothers, you know. Broke those glasses, and I know I got home without a scratch. But I was worried. I knew my mama would find out. I remember not being able to eat dinner. I remember asking my mother if I could go and visit my friend Rhonda, who lived 2 blocks away. She said I could go as soon as I washed the dishes. So I went 2 blocks away and I told Rhonda Coleman, my best friend, what had happened. I said, do you think I should tell my mother? She said, oh, no, gave me the worst advice in the world. She said, oh, no, whatever you do, don't tell your mama. So I went home that night and I went to sleep, and I had a fitful sleep. But I got up in the morning and I went back to Daniel Hale Williams Elementary School, and I went in like nothing had happened. And I went upstairs to my 6th grade classroom where Mr. James was, my favorite teacher in the whole wide world. And as I was sitting there doing my work, something happened that no child ever wants to hear. Your name on blast on the intercom being summoned to the principal's office. They looked at me. Miss Goody Two-Shoes got called to the office. I kind of knew what was wrong. But it took me a long time to walk down those steps, down that hall, and into the office where Donna Hall and her mama was sitting. And her mama rolled her eyes at me. And I didn't say a word. As Dr. Carrie B. Dawson ushered all of us into her office, and she looked at me and she said, "Where is your mother?" Now, I knew where my mother was and why she was there. But my principal picked up that black telephone and dialed the numbers from memory and called my house. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and she answered the phone. And after Dr. Carrie B. Dawson had explained to her what had happened, my mother said to my principal, "Give her the phone." I held it up to my ear. And I could hear my mama say, "I told you about acting a fool at their school. Wait till you get home." Now, unlike today, I walked home for lunch every single day. I dragged my feet as much as I could, but I finally made it to the front door of 2042 Vermont Street, where my mother was waiting. Now let me explain to y'all, everybody's got different rules about child rearing. But in those days, my parents believed the good book. Spare the rod, you'll spoil the child. Now, my mother was a disciplinarian in our household. I wish my father would whip us instead. But he would instead talk about you so bad, you just want him to pick up a belt. My mother had the audacity sometimes to send you to the tree to get the switch to whip you with. But she had a new weapon. She had an extension cord that belonged to my brother's electric guitar amplifier that she had tied into a wonderful cat o' nine tails. And your role was to strip to your underwear, kneel at the foot of the bed, and if she messed around and hit herself, you got more licks. I remember this like it was yesterday. Because I didn't get lunch that day, I got a whipping instead. And she explained to me in those kind words, "I'm not whipping you because you were fighting. I'm whipping you because you were fighting and you didn't tell me." I didn't eat lunch that day. And I know I had welts on my legs when I went back to school. But stay home? Oh no, that wasn't going to happen. Now I can count the number of whippings I had on one hand. And I want to tell my cousin now, the reason that my mother's children always told on themselves because it was less punishment than if you let somebody else tell you. And it was all because my mother had a father who did the same thing to her. She grew up in Kent, Mississippi. And one time she had some smart words for one of the neighbors. And the neighbor said, "Wait till I tell your father." So she walked straight home and said, "Miss Lila gonna tell you I said so and so and so to her." So he looked at her and said, "Well, did you?" She said, "Well, yeah, I did." He said, "Well, you just wait on your whipping." And he would just let the days build up. And she would never know when that whipping was coming. But I knew, because of my mama, I'm a better woman today. I know if I look and listen to reports on the radio about parents being sent to jail and family protective services coming and putting them in jail and giving them exorbitant fines. I just heard some mother whip their child with an extension cord and she has a $2,100 fine. I keep thinking, it's a good thing my parents raised us when they did, because I'm sure we would have made the news. Well, I just want you to know, I was a model student. I was a model child. And I was only one other time that I can tell you I was ever in any trouble. Sure, I had to go to court. Sure, the police were involved, but that